My future son-in-law wouldn't stop asking about the land boundaries, not just once or twice, but literally every time he came to visit our Montana ranch. Derek would stand by the living room window, mug of tea in his hand, gazing past the grassland toward the forest line where our property ended. "Where exactly does the land end, William?" he'd ask smoothly, like it was just casual talk. The first time, I brushed it off. The second time, I thought maybe he was just interested in rural life. By the sixth time, something in my stomach churned. Emma, my daughter, would dismiss it with a laugh. "He's just fascinated by ranch living, Dad. You know how people from the city are." But I'd worked 38 years as a mechanical engineer before retirement. I'd learned to recognize patterns, and Derek's pattern was crystal clear. I first met Derek 8 months ago when Emma brought him home for Christmas. 35 years old, well-groomed, worked as a financial consultant in Billings. He said all the appropriate things, praised my wife Sarah's baking, asked insightful questions about our ranch lifestyle. He seemed ideal, perhaps too ideal. Sarah passed away 4 years ago. The illness took her quickly, and I suddenly found myself living alone in this sprawling house on 180 acres that we'd purchased 28 years ago for barely anything. Back then, it was just wild terrain. Now, with Billings expanding outward, real estate developers were hovering like hawks. I'd received proposals, substantial ones, but this was Sarah's vision. I couldn't betray her vision. Emma understood that. She'd been raised here, helped her mother cultivate the flower beds that now grew abundantly each summer. After Sarah died, Emma visited me every Saturday, concerned I was becoming isolated. When she encountered Derek at some business conference and they began seeing each other, I felt relieved for her. She deserved happiness after that catastrophe with her previous boyfriend. The proposal came quickly. 5 months of courtship, then Derek proposed at some upscale bistro in Billings. Emma phoned me practically breathless with joy. I said what any father would say. "Congratulations, I'm thrilled for you. He seems like a wonderful guy." But I couldn't stop thinking about the land boundaries. The wedding was scheduled for early October, right here at the ranch. Emma wanted to marry where her mother had cherished. She'd already contacted a coordinator, reserved a catering company, mailed invitations to 180 guests. Derek was enthusiastic, assisting with planning, proposing we extend the ceremony space. "You know, William," he mentioned one Saturday in August, "we could really expand this area if we removed those pines along the northern border." "Those pines mark the property line," I responded. "Right, but how far north does your land actually extend?" There it was again. That night, after Derek and Emma departed, I sat in my office and retrieved the land title. 180 acres, acquired in 1996 for $75,000. Sarah and I had saved diligently for years to afford it. Now it was valued at over $3.5 million, possibly more with development potential. I'd never disclosed the precise worth to Emma. She knew we owned the ranch outright, knew I had a secure retirement, but she didn't know about my patents. Throughout my engineering career, I'd developed a specialized valve used in commercial HVAC systems. Nothing extraordinary, but the licensing fees had been flowing for 23 years. Combined with that and prudent investing, I had approximately $7.2 million in total assets. The ranch was the visible portion. The remainder sat discreetly in accounts Emma had never inquired about. I deliberately lived simply, drove a 12-year-old pickup, wore denim and work shirts, and repaired things personally. After witnessing Sarah's affluent relatives destroy each other over estates, I discovered that wealth transforms people. Better to be the modest neighbor nobody suspects. But now, Derek was probing. I contacted my lawyer, Patricia, the following day. "I need you to investigate someone for me. Derek Mitchell claims he's a financial consultant in Billings." "William, is this concerning Emma's fiancé?" "Just being cautious." Patricia exhaled. "I'll have someone conduct a background investigation, but William, if you have doubts, you should speak with Emma." "Not yet. I might be mistaken." But I wasn't mistaken. My instinct had been accurate too many times. 4 days later, Patricia called. "William, we need to meet, not over the phone." I drove to her office in Bozeman. She shut the door and passed me a file. Derek Mitchell is exactly who he claims to be. Licensed financial consultant, works for Summit Advisory Group. Clean background, no criminal record. But, she produced another document, I had our investigator probe deeper. Derek's been engaged twice previously, both times to women from prosperous families. Both engagements terminated abruptly right after he'd gotten access to family financial details. No litigation, no accusations, just convenient timing. My grip tightened on the file. Names: Jennifer Harrison, daughter of a software entrepreneur. Engagement lasted 6 months, concluded 2 weeks after Derek attended a family discussion about the Harrison Trust. Michelle Peterson, daughter of a commercial developer. Engagement lasted 5 months, ended right after Michelle's father updated his estate plan. Nobody filed lawsuits, William. These families don't litigate. They pay to make situations vanish quietly. But I made some inquiries. Jennifer's father informed me confidentially that Derek had asked very particular questions about asset transfers and estate structures. He suspected Derek was scheming something but couldn't substantiate it. My grip tightened on the file. What about Emma? Emma has no substantial assets personally. She earns well in advertising, but nothing that would attract someone like Derek. However, Patricia paused, if Derek believes Emma will inherit this ranch and doesn't comprehend its actual value, he might be speculating on future wealth. Or he's researched me and knows more than he's revealing. Patricia nodded. I'd suggest having a frank conversation with Emma. But I couldn't, not without evidence. Emma was so happy, so enthusiastic about the wedding. What if I was wrong? What if I destroyed her relationship over suspicion? I needed certainty. That weekend, Derek visited to help with some wedding arrangements. He parked his BMW in the driveway and approached the porch where I was sitting. William, you have a moment? I wanted to discuss something with you. Sure. He sat down, all genuine concern. Listen, I know this might be delicate, but Emma and I have been discussing our future, finances, planning, all that mature adult stuff. He chuckled. I'm a financial consultant, so I can't help myself. I was wondering, have you considered estate planning, ensuring everything's structured properly for Emma? My blood froze, but I maintained a neutral expression. I have a will. That's excellent, but with a property like this, you might want to contemplate a trust structure, more tax advantageous. I'd be pleased to assist, no fee. I'm becoming family. I'll consider it. And William, I hope you don't mind me mentioning this, but at your age, you should also think about long-term care arrangements. What if something happens? Who's going to oversee this place? A ranch is substantial responsibility for one individual. There it was again, that identical script he'd likely used with Jennifer's father and Michelle's father. Plant the concern, gain access to the finances, then what? I didn't know yet, but I was going to find it. You raise a valid point, I said deliberately. Tell you what, why don't you and I meet sometime next week? You can explain all these approaches to me. Derek's eyes brightened. Absolutely. I'll prepare some materials. We can really optimize your situation. After he left, I contacted Patricia again. I need surveillance. William, he just inquired about my estate planning and long-term care. He's positioning. I need to understand what he's really planning. Patricia was silent for a moment. I know someone, a private investigator, very discreet. Engage them. The investigator, a woman named Rebecca, was worth every dollar. Within a week, she had Derek's phone records, his email patterns, his meeting calendar. Nothing illegal, she assured me, just skilled detective work and some tactical social engineering. She contacted me on a Wednesday evening in September. Mr. Anderson, you need to hear this. She'd managed to install a recording device in Derek's vehicle during a routine maintenance appointment at the dealership. It was legal, she assured me, because the device was technically a diagnostic sensor that happened to capture audio. The attorneys could resolve it later. I listened to the recording in my office, alone. Derek's voice. Yeah, I'm at the ranch again, playing the devoted son-in-law. This old guy has no clue. Another voice, male. You certain about the value? Derek, Brandon, I've examined the county records 4 times, 180 acres, and he purchased it in '96 for nothing. With billings expanding this far, we're talking minimum $3.5 million, likely closer to $4 if we manage it correctly. Brandon, and the old man? Derek, he's got to be rich. Look at this property. Owns it outright. He's been retired for 6 years, lives alone, no liabilities. He's probably sitting on a few million in investments, maybe more. The daughter is oblivious. She thinks daddy's just a typical middle-class retiree. Brandon, so what's the strategy? Derek, I marry Emma in October, spend the first year being the perfect spouse, the dedicated son-in-law, get him to trust me, maybe obtain financial power of attorney under the pretense of helping manage things. Old guy lives alone, who knows what could happen? An accident, a fall, some mental decline? Before long, he's in a facility, I'm overseeing his affairs, and Emma inherits everything. We'll be divorced before she realizes what happened, and I'll claim my portion in the settlement. Brandon laughed. You're a ruthless operator, Derek. Derek, I'm a pragmatic businessman. Jennifer was a waste of effort. Her father caught on too rapidly. Michelle was better, but her old man had everything in a trust. This one is perfect. Small town guy, no sophistication about protecting wealth. It's like he's inviting being exploited. I stopped the recording. My hands were trembling.
Not with fear, with fury. But fury wouldn't help Emma. I needed to be strategic. I summoned Patricia and Rebecca into an emergency meeting. I have the proof now. I need a plan. Patricia listened to the recording twice. This is criminal conspiracy. We could contact the police. And inform Emma her fiancé is a con artist 3 weeks before the wedding with 180 guests arriving. She'll never forgive me if I don't have conclusive evidence. She'll believe I'm attempting to control her life. He literally admitted to planning your potential harm, William. Potential. He didn't specify he'd execute it himself. A competent lawyer would dismantle that. I need him to incriminate himself before witnesses. At the wedding? Patricia raised an eyebrow. You want to expose him during the ceremony? I want Emma to hear it. I want her to comprehend what kind of person she was about to marry. And I want 180 witnesses so he can't manipulate his way out. We spent the following 2 weeks preparing. Rebecca installed tiny cameras throughout the ranch property. Patricia prepared legal documents that would protect Emma and me regardless of what transpired. I performed the role of the trusting future father-in-law. Meeting with Derek to discuss estate planning, he arrived at my office with the briefcase full of forms. All right, William, I've prepared some documents that will really streamline everything. This power of attorney form will allow me to help manage things if you ever require it. And this one updates your will to establish a trust with Emma as the primary beneficiary, but with me as trustee to ensure everything's handled appropriately. I pretended to examine the documents. And this helps with taxes? Absolutely. You could save tens of thousands of dollars. I nodded slowly. You know, Derek, I've been thinking. You're right that this place is becoming a lot for me. Maybe it is time to start making changes. His eyes gleamed. I'm glad you're being practical about this. But I'm curious about something. You keep asking about the land boundaries. Why is that? He didn't hesitate. Just thinking long-term, William. If Emma inherits this place, we might want to subdivide some parcels, keep the house and a few acres. No point retaining land we won't utilize. We? Well, Emma and I. As her husband, I'd want to help her make intelligent financial decisions. I smiled. Of course, family helps family. He departed that day believing he'd succeeded. I let him believe it. The week before the wedding, Emma noticed I seemed preoccupied. Dad, are you all right? You've been quiet recently. Just thinking about your mother, wishing she could be here for this. Emma embraced me. I know, Dad, I miss her too, but I think she'd be happy for me. Derek's wonderful. I wanted to tell her everything right then, but I couldn't. She needed to hear it herself, understand it completely. Otherwise, she'd always question if I'd manipulated the situation. I'm sure she would be, I said, despising myself for the deception. The day before the wedding, Derek's friend Brandon arrived. I recognized him from Rebecca's surveillance photographs. He was staying at a hotel in town, supposedly Derek's best man. I watched them at the rehearsal dinner, laughing together, confident. Derek gave a toast. To William, who's welcomed me into his family, and to Emma, who's made me the most fortunate man alive, tomorrow is going to be perfect. Everyone applauded. I raised my glass and smiled. The wedding day was flawless. Montana weather, October sunshine, cottonwood leaves turning gold, mountains crisp against the azure sky. Sarah would have loved it. Guests filled the folding chairs on our lawn. The arbor Emma had insisted upon stood decorated with autumn flowers. I walked Emma down the makeshift aisle, her arm through mine, her mother's locket at her throat. She looked so happy. It shattered my heart knowing what was coming. "I love you, Dad," she whispered. "I love you too, sweetheart. Always." I took my seat in the front row. The ceremony commenced. The officiant began his speech about love and commitment. Derek stood at the altar, immaculate in his tuxedo, smiling. Then, during the exchange of vows, just as Derek was about to say "I do," Emma's hand moved to her bouquet. She pulled out a small folded paper and handed it to me. Her eyes locked on mine, full of tears. I opened it. 3 words in her handwriting. "Dad, help me." Everything stopped. I looked at her. She was staring at Derek, her face pale. I realized she was terrified. I stood up. Stop the ceremony." The crowd murmured. Derek turned. "William, what?" "Emma," I kept my voice calm. "What's wrong?" She took a shaky breath. The words tumbled out in a rush. "I heard him. Last night I went to his hotel room to surprise him, and I heard him talking to Brandon about how he was going to—" She couldn't finish. Derek's face reddened. "Emma, you're being ridiculous. This is wedding nerves." I moved forward, but 2 men were faster. The county sheriff and a deputy, both friends of mine who'd been sitting in the audience in civilian clothes, had Derek's arms behind his back in seconds. "Derek Mitchell, you're being detained for questioning regarding conspiracy to commit fraud and possible conspiracy to commit violence." Brandon attempted to flee. He didn't make it past the driveway before Rebecca tackled him. She'd been waiting by the vehicles just in case. The next hour was chaos. Guests being asked to provide statements, Derek screaming about false accusations and litigation, Emma sobbing in my arms. Patricia appeared with the recordings, the evidence files, everything we'd collected. Finally, the police took Derek and Brandon away. The guests slowly dispersed, some supportive, others just eager for gossip. The caterers packed up the untouched meal. Emma and I sat on the porch steps, still in our wedding attire, watching the sun sink towards the mountains. "I'm sorry, Dad," she said quietly. "I should have told you sooner. I've known for 3 days. I heard them talking and I just froze. I kept thinking maybe I'd misunderstood. Maybe there was an explanation." "So you went through with all the preparations? And I was going to marry him, and—" She wiped her eyes. "Then you gave me that note at the last possible second. Why, Emma?" "Because I was scared. What if I was wrong? What if I ruined my own wedding over a misunderstanding? But then standing there, about to say I do, I realized I couldn't. I couldn't marry someone I didn't trust. So I wrote the note and I prayed you'd understand." I did understand. I've understood for months. "You knew?" "I suspected. I had him investigated. I have recordings of him and Brandon planning this entire thing. I was going to expose him today, even if you hadn't given me the note." Emma stared at me. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you wouldn't have believed me. You'd have thought I was being a controlling father who didn't trust your judgment. You needed to discover it yourself, reach your own conclusion. I was just there to support you when you did." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "I feel so stupid." "You're not stupid. You're someone who believes the best in people. That's a good quality, even when people don't deserve it. Derek is a professional con artist. He's deceived women and families before. You're not the first, and probably not the last." "What happens now?" "Now, the district attorney will review the evidence. Derek and Brandon will likely face charges for conspiracy and fraud. You'll give your statement. We'll deal with canceling wedding gifts and apologizing to guests. Life continues." We spent in silence for a while. Then Emma asked, "Dad, how wealthy are you?" I laughed. "Why do you want to know?" Because Derek kept saying you were loaded. I always thought we were comfortable but normal. Now I'm wondering what I don't know. Your mother and I bought this ranch for $75,000 in 1996. It's now worth $3.5 million. I also hold several patents from my engineering work that pay royalties, and I've invested carefully for 28 years. Total assets, roughly $7.2 million. Emma's jaw dropped. $7.2 million? And you drive that old truck and wear clothes from discount stores? Money doesn't impress me, Emma. Your mother and I grew up poor. We knew what money could do to families, how it could poison relationships. We decided to live modestly, enjoy what we had, and not make wealth our identity. I wanted you to grow up normal, not as some rich kid who thought she was better than everyone else. And my inheritance? Already in a trust that takes effect when I die. You'll be comfortable, but it's structured so no spouse can access it without your explicit consent. I established that years ago after watching your Aunt Carol's divorce. I wanted to protect you. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, Dad, I wish Mom was here. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. Not with fear, with fury. But fury.
4 months later, Derek and Brandon were charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, and several other crimes. Derek accepted a plea agreement, 6 years probation, full restitution of our investigation costs, and a permanent prohibition on working in financial services. Brandon received 3 years for his role. Emma moved back to the ranch for a while, recovering. She attended therapy, processed the betrayal, slowly rebuilt herself. She started dating again eventually, but she was more cautious now, sadder but wiser. As for me, I'm still here in the ranch house, still driving that old truck, still wearing work shirts. But I did make one change. I had Sarah's flower beds expanded, planted new varieties, added a stone memorial with her name on it. Sometimes Emma and I sit there in the evening, watching the sunset, and I tell her stories about her mother, about the woman who believed in buying land instead of luxury cars, and planting gardens instead of displaying jewelry, and building a life instead of maintaining an image. Dad, Emma said one evening, do you ever regret not being more open about the money? If I'd known, maybe I would have been more suspicious of Derek from the start. Maybe, or maybe you'd have attracted more Dereks, wondering if everyone who showed interest was after your inheritance. The way we did it, you got to be yourself. You got to make your own choices. And when things went wrong, you had the strength to ask for help. That's worth more than any amount of money. She leaned against me. I love you, Dad. I love you too, sweetheart. The sun dropped behind the mountains, painting the sky orange and purple. Somewhere in the meadow, a bird called. Sarah's garden bloomed, wild and beautiful, just the way she'd wanted it. Money can't buy moments like this, but it can buy the security to enjoy them without fear. That's the real value of wealth. Not what it displays, but what it protects. And I'd protect my daughter with every dollar I had for as long as I lived. I remember the weeks after the wedding that wasn't. The ranch felt different, quieter in some ways, but also more honest. Emma stayed in her old bedroom, the one with the faded wallpaper that Sarah had picked out when Emma was 12. She'd wanted to redecorate it 100 times, but Emma had always asked her to keep it the same. Those first few mornings were the hardest. I'd hear Emma crying through the wall at 3 a.m., muffled sobs that she thought I couldn't hear. I'd stand outside her door, hand raised to knock, then lower it again. She needed to process this her own way. I'd learned that much from Sarah. Sometimes the best support is just being there, waiting, ready when they need you. Patricia called regularly with updates on the case. Derek had hired an expensive attorney from Helena, someone with a reputation for getting white-collar criminals reduced sentences. But the evidence was overwhelming. The recordings, the pattern with his previous fiancées, the testimony from Jennifer's father, who finally agreed to come forward, it all painted a picture of a man who'd made a career out of targeting vulnerable families. The prosecutor is considering additional charges, Patricia told me one afternoon. A
Apparently, they found emails between Derek and Brandon going back 3 years. They've been running this operation systematically. You're the third target, William. There might be others we don't know about. How many lives has he ruined? I asked. We may never know the full extent, but thanks to you and Emma, he won't ruin any more. Emma overheard that conversation. She'd come downstairs for coffee and paused in the hallway. When I hung up, she walked into my office and sat down across from me. 3 years, she said. He's been doing this for 3 years? At least. And I was just target number 3? Her voice was hollow. Emma. No, it's okay. I mean, it's not okay, but I need to face it. I wasn't special to him. I was just a mark, a means to an end. She wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. Do you know what the worst part is? I waited. I introduced him to everyone, all my friends, my colleagues, my entire family. I brought him to Aunt Carol's birthday party. I took him to meet Mom's parents before Grandma died. Everyone loved him. Everyone thought I'd finally found a good guy after Josh. She laughed bitterly. And the whole time he was sizing us up, calculating, planning. It's not your fault. I know that intellectually, but emotionally, she shook her head. I keep replaying every conversation, every date, every moment, wondering what was real and what was performance. Did he ever actually like me, or was I always just the daughter of a man with valuable land? I didn't have an answer for that. Maybe some of it had been real. Maybe Derek genuinely liked her at first, before the calculation took over, or maybe it had been fake from the very beginning. Either way, it didn't matter now. What helped your mother, I said slowly, was focusing on what she could control. She couldn't control that her cousin stole from their grandmother. She couldn't change that her family tore itself apart over money, but she could control how she lived her own life. So she decided to live differently. Emma nodded. That's why you two kept the money quiet. That's why we kept it quiet. We saw what money did to people, how it made them suspicious, greedy, paranoid. We didn't want that for you. Did it work? She asked. I mean, Derek still found us, still targeted us. But you weren't changed by it. You grew up honest, kind, trusting. You built real friendships, had real relationships. Until Derek, you had a good life. One bad actor doesn't negate all of that. She considered this. I guess you're right. I wish I'd been smarter, more careful. Emma, you were in love. Love makes us vulnerable. That's not a weakness. It's part of being human. Over the next few weeks, Emma slowly started rebuilding. She went back to work, threw herself into a new advertising campaign. She started running in the mornings, something she used to do before she got too busy with wedding planning. She called her friends, explained what had happened, accepted their support. I watched her heal in small increments. A genuine smile here, a real laugh there, the light coming back into her eyes bit by bit. One Saturday in early November, she suggested we go through some of Sarah's things in the attic. We'd been meaning to do it for years, but had kept putting it off. I think I'm ready now. Are you? We spent the day up there sorting through boxes of memories. Sarah's college textbooks, her first nursing uniform, photo albums before digital cameras. Emma found her mother's journal from the year they bought the ranch. Listen to this, Emma said, reading aloud. William thinks I'm crazy for wanting so much land. He says we'll never use it all, but I have a feeling someday this space will be valuable, not because we can sell it, but because we can keep it, because we can give Emma a place that's truly hers, that no one can take away from her. Emma's voice cracked on the last words. She knew. Even back then, she knew. Your mother was the smartest person I ever met. She understood things I couldn't see. We found other treasures too. Sarah's recipe box with handwritten cards, some splattered with flour and chocolate. Her collection of pressed flowers from their first summer together in the ranch. Letters I'd written to her during a business trip to Japan, back when international calls were too expensive for daily conversations. You were romantic, Emma said, reading one of the letters. Who knew? Your mother brought that out in me.
As the sun set, we carried the boxes we wanted to keep downstairs. The rest we'd donate or dispose of later. But for now, we had what mattered, the pieces of Sarah that still connected us to her. That night, Emma cooked dinner, Sarah's lasagna recipe, the one that took all day and filled the house with the smell of tomatoes and basil. We ate on the porch, despite the November chill, wrapped in blankets and watching the stars come out. "Dad," Emma said suddenly, "I've been thinking about something." "What's that?" "After everything that happened, after Derek and the investigation and the trial that's coming, I don't want to live my life afraid. I don't want to suspect everyone who shows interest in me. That's not who I am. That's not who Mom raised me to be." "Good," I said. "You shouldn't change who you are because of what he did." "But I also can't be naive, so I've been thinking maybe I need to be more involved in understanding the financial side of things. Not because I care about the money, but because I need to protect myself. I need to understand what I have and how to keep it safe." "That's wise. Would you teach me about the patents, the investments, the trust structures? I want to understand it all." Over the following months, I did exactly that. We sat in my office every Sunday afternoon, and I walked her through everything. The patent portfolio, the investment strategy Sarah and I had developed, the trust that would protect her inheritance, the insurance policies, the tax implications. Emma took notes, asked questions, challenged my assumptions. "You're good at this," I told her. "I have a good teacher." By the time Derek's trial came around in February, Emma was a different person. Not harder, exactly, but more grounded, more aware. She testified with clarity and strength, describing how she'd discovered Derek's plan, how she'd felt, what she'd lost. Derek's attorney tried to paint her as a vindictive ex-fiancée, but the evidence was overwhelming. The recordings, the pattern with his previous fiancées, the testimony from Jennifer's father who finally agreed to come forward. It all painted a picture of a man who'd made a career out of targeting vulnerable families. Derek received 5 years in prison, with an additional 5 on probation. Brandon got 3 years. Rebecca's father, Jennifer's father, even Michelle's family came forward with civil suits. Derek's entire life collapsed like a house of cards. Emma watched the verdict come in with a neutral expression. Afterward, outside the courthouse, reporters asked her how she felt. "Justice was served," she said simply. "Now I'm ready to move forward." And she did. She started dating again, but carefully this time. She insisted on long courtships, on really knowing someone before getting serious. She attended therapy regularly, worked through her trust issues, emerged stronger. 2 years after the wedding that wasn't, Emma met someone new. James was a veterinarian, quiet and genuine, with no interest in money or land or anything except animals and the woman he was falling in love with. Emma brought him to the ranch slowly, casually, watching for red flags that never came. When James eventually proposed, 3 years into their relationship, he asked my permission first. "I know what Emma went through," he said. "I know why you might be cautious. But I love her. Not your ranch, not your money. Her, and I'd like your blessing." I gave it, and this time I meant it. Their wedding was small, intimate, just family and close friends. No elaborate ceremony, no 200 guests, just the people who mattered, gathered on the same lawn where Emma had almost married the wrong man. As I walked Emma down the aisle, for the second time, but for the right reasons, I felt Sarah's presence. The garden she'd planted, now mature and lush, the mountains she'd loved in the distance, the land she'd believed in, still protecting the family she'd created. Emma looked happy, truly, genuinely happy, and James looked at her like she was the only person in the world. "You ready?" I whispered as we reached the arbor. "I'm ready," she said. This time, when I took my seat, I knew I could relax. This time, there would be no interrupted ceremony, no dramatic reveals, just 2 people who loved each other, making a promise they intended to keep. After the reception, after the guests had gone home and the caterers had packed up, Emma and James found me sitting on the porch. "Thank you, Dad," Emma said, "for everything, for protecting me when I needed it, for letting me make my own choices, for being there." That's what fathers do, I said. No, she corrected. That's what good fathers do. I'm lucky to have you. James shook my hand. I'll take good care of her, sir. I know you will. And James, she'll take good care of you too. She's her mother's daughter. They drove off to their honeymoon. A simple trip to the coast, nothing extravagant. Emma didn't need extravagance. She'd learned what mattered. I sat on the porch long after they'd gone, watching the sun set behind the mountains. Another ending, another beginning, the cycle continuing. Money couldn't buy moments like this, but it had bought something important. Time. Time to heal, time to grow, time to learn. Time for Emma to become the woman Sarah always knew she could be. And in the end, that was worth more than all the land, all the patents, all the investments combined.